Hey everyone, welcome to GTM Secrets, everything about go-to-market, sales, marketing, RevOps, you name it. Today I'm pretty excited. We have Jesse Osborne on the line, who has a pretty impressive sales dev background. Jesse, I don't want to butcher your background, so can you share a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'd love to. Probably spent the first 10 years of my career working in non-software companies, and then the last 10 or 11 working in software companies. I didn't know what a sales development was. I didn't know what that meant until about 2013, and was leading AE teams and was a VP of sales and a director of sales, and then joined Tupalti in 2019 as the head of sales development. And I'd never led just SDRs and thought it was going to be easy, to be honest with you. And I thought I'll do this for a year or two, then I'll go back into the sales side of the house. And
Yeah,
here it
right.
is. Here it is 5.5 years later, and I have no desire to go back onto the sales front. I find leading sales development as someone who's led as a VP of sales and as a sales development VP, I've found that the sales development is far more complex. And I think it changes every year. It keeps it fresh. The tactics, the approach, everything is different every year, and you have to stay current. So I have no desire to bounce into anything else at this point. I love what I'm doing here.
You know, I have an exceedingly high close rate. No matter what I'm selling, I'm good at one thing. You can ask my wife or ex-wife. Suck at everything else. But man, the demand gen side or sales dev side, so much harder than closing. There's so much crap out there. Breaking through all the BS is very difficult. Now, I want to segue for a second. You were telling me why you're working from your car. Talk a little bit about
Yeah.
that.
So it's not a very exciting story, but um, back in 2020, when we all got forced to go work from home 5 days a week, I found myself working in my living room, and my wife was walking around in the background, and I tell some bad jokes every once in a while, and she would give the old eye roll, and it kind of took me off my flow. And then we also had construction going on at my house, so I had all these guys in painter gear walking in and out, and their tools, and it was a little distracting. So I thought, I'm gonna go sit in the back seat of my car for a Zoom call. And then I sat back here and I went, why am I working inside? I got a 360 view. I live on a quiet street. It's not a lot of traffic. And I got a tree in my driveway, some kind of in nature. And I thought, I'm just going to work out here. And so I've got you can't see all the equipment, but it is very decked out in here with lighting. And I got iPad stands and all kinds of tables and cup holders and everything. So I found my little zone here.
That's awesome. I think it's creative for people who, working from home that want to get a change of scenery. I think that's awesome. So, take note there to listeners. The first question that I have for you is, and we talked just a little bit about this, but tactically, what do sales development reps, you're managing like 100 of them. Most of them are outbound. I think you said about 80 out of 100. You're managing a lot. You have a lot of experience. You used to be at GrowBots, I saw on your profile. Outbound. Outbound sucks right now. And everyone is using the buzzword AI. It's a pain, right? So you have Apollo that will do like AI personal openers. You have Clay that everyone's freaking out about. I think it's overhyped, to be honest. We were talking about another one called Actively. There's all sorts of tools out there. You buy them all, you're going to go broke. What are people doing wrong? What are people doing right in 2024 outbound?
I think that's a very good outline, the way you position that question. And I think what most companies get wrong is they undervalue creativity and try to overscience it. So as someone who's been in sales for 20 years, when I joined sales, we had phones. That's it.
You and me both.
Yeah,
I'm young and you and me both.
that's all we had, right? And if you remember sales floors back in like the 2000s, you'd walk in and it was lit up. People's desks were messy with Post-it notes everywhere, and it was never quiet. And today, sales floors are very quiet. And I think what I've noticed is people are spending a lot of time researching, trying to get their tech stack built out right, and trying to overscience. And I get it. You've got in software sales, you're trying to sell globally, and you can't sell to everyone all day. So how do you pinpoint who do I go after today? And so that's where I think AI has been able to come in and give some improvements, whether it's how do I focus, what account should I focus on today? But given those tools to be able to focus, then it comes down to how creative are we being? And that's where I think most companies are coming up short when it comes to hiring people and saying, I don't just want robots who are going to execute sequences. I want people that are going to actually insert some personality into their prospecting, because I think that the buyers want that human connection. I think none of us want to get sold to by a bot, but we want to have that human connection. And I think if you can make somebody laugh, if you can connect with somebody on a personal level, or it doesn't have to be personal, like about their personal life, but about their work life. If you can connect, if you can have that connection with people, I think that's what builds trust. And we all know trust is going to help to win more deals.
Yeah, and I think, playing devil, so I agree with you, but playing devil's advocate, you want to focus on scale. You want to make sure that you hit everybody. And the reality is, even if you spend 30 minutes crafting an email, that's awesome. There's only like a 30%, 40% chance that they're going to read it, right? So
Yeah,
I know that you still are a fan of outreach tools. You guys use outreach. You were telling me you use Sixth Sense for intent and whatnot, and account identification. You use a lot of tools. So give me if you can, a practical example of how you use that, and then get very creative.
yeah. So I think I'll take the intent stuff separately, but when it comes to account research, and I'll just give an example. I think it's probably one of the better sales prospecting techniques that I've seen in a while that demonstrates the creativity. So we have this SDR who's researching an account. They're researching the LinkedIn profile of their contact, and what they scroll down and notice is that this person was a board member of some zoo. And so then the SDR, they sent an email and, about like, here's why you should talk to Tupalti. But then they did a handwritten letter and sent it to the person and said, hey, notice that you were on the board of I can't remember the city zoo, and Tupalti is going to donate $200 to that zoo.
Okay.
Now that's hard to scale. I get it, but the mentality of the person who said, hey, you know what? I'm not just going to look at the job title, or, because you've got ICP and you've got personas and industries, and a lot of people just stop there and say, okay, I'm just going to personalize based on that. But if you can go one layer deeper and find those little nuggets to build that connection, and that became an opportunity, and we ultimately won that account. So now, again, hard to scale that. Not everyone's a board member of a zoo. That you can't send everyone $200 as a donation. But it's the mindset. And I think that's what I think salespeople in the future, I think that level of creativity is going to be rewarded more than being someone who's just good at executing sequences and pushing the right buttons here and there, if that makes sense.
I think some of the old school channels are actually some of the most interesting right now. Cold calling is not dead. I could go on and on about that.
Me
How
too.
you do it for sure makes a difference. Yesterday I had somebody on that was talking about B2B smart TV ads. I thought that was brilliant when you can hyper target, retarget, etc. Handwritten letters, I've done it. I think people focus too much on volume and not scale, and I think those are different. Volume, sure, self-explanatory. Scale to me is what gets the best conversion rates. And if you can get 3 demos or 3, discovery calls, whatever you're selling in a day, but you sent 15 messages, who the hell cares about volume?
And what about your email domain? If you're blasting out thousands of emails, you're gonna affect your domain, and then you're gonna have to send 2,000 just to have 1,000 actually land, and eventually you destroy your territory. Email prospecting at scale, that I think that died a few years ago in terms of, but companies are still doing it. So going back to your question, what are companies doing wrong? Like that is, it's outdated mentality to say, let's blast out 1,000 emails because we'll get a 7% response rate. Like that worked in 2018, 2019, maybe a little 2020, but that slowly died out. And now with the Google email restrictions, these are things that are now making companies much more hyper aware about that. I think that's a little long overdue by Google. I'm glad they're doing it. I think the companies that are spraying and praying and spamming we shouldn't continue to reward that behavior.
Yeah, I think Google and I want to say Apple, no, Google and Office, they're now limiting if you send out more than 10,000 emails, they're going to dock you.
Right.
I think it's in a day. So even a large enterprise, you know, you have 100 SDRs, you guys are more mid-market, I would say. I
Yeah.
realize that's not a whole lot when you're talking about true scale. And then I don't know if you saw, but Google, and I think they're rolling it out in the next couple weeks, I could be wrong. They're actually going to give you a warning. The recipient gets a warning saying, hey, there's a tracking pixel in here.
Yeah.
That's going to get some flack. I think that is going to hurt cold email drastically.
It's essentially going to tell the recipient you're getting a spam email. That's what it's going to blast out to people. And I've received a few of these with those flags that have said, you know, the one that says unknown sender. I can't remember exactly what it says. And even if it's a well-written, personalized email with that big banner on the top of it, instantly your brain goes to this is a spam junk email. So it's going to be harder.
It has a defensive reaction, right? I want to track it. I run a data company. I want all of the data under the frickin' sun. But if I got an email saying this person's tracking me, it's like when people used to send read receipts. No, I'm not clicking yes. There's just no way in hell I'm clicking yes.
Yeah.
And I love when people still send read receipts. I find it hilarious.
I haven't seen one of those in years, but
usually they're like Indian software dev companies.
Yeah, I'm good.
So I have an interesting question. Now, I'm biased. Identity matrix de-anonymizes traffic, right down to the person. And we were talking about 6 cents. You know, there's a billion companies that can tell you what accounts on your site. It's stupid easy. Some do it to varying degrees, right? So you have the issue where if someone's sitting in a Marriott, they're traveling, it's going to look like Marriott was on your site. You know, so there's some misleading info there depending on how they're getting the data. But it's good. It's been around forever. There are a couple of us, obviously identity is the best, but there are a couple of us that will de-anonymize traffic down to the exact person.
That's game changing.
Okay, so you have a good response. 1 out of 10 people I talk to have a visceral reaction to it, so that's good.
Yeah.
Now, I get a lot of questions, though, on how you use that data. Whether you're using us or somebody else, it doesn't matter. A lot of people are saying, okay, cool data, what do I do with it? Now, we're a data company. We claim to de-anonymize, so when you come to our site, you literally get an email if you fit our ICP that says you peaked, and we're super, super honest about the fact that we're tracking them. I have a cybersecurity client. They need to put a day delay in their sequence before they reach out. That way it's a happy coincidence when they pick up the phone and call the CISO. If you were using what I would call warm leads, people who have been on your site 5-10 minutes, they fit your ICP, etc., what do you think about how someone could best reach out? And I know that's a broad question, but how would you approach that? Would you mention it? Would you not? What's your thought?
Yeah, I think there'd be variables that it would depend on what you mentioned about the happy coincidence. I think that, well, let me take a step back. What we're currently doing today, what I see a lot of happening when you have the account, you know, who's visited, you call that company and say, hey, someone from your company was on our website. And then you end up in this spaghetti monster conversation about, was it me? Oh, well, then do you know who it would have been? No, I have no idea. Well, then do you know who runs your accounts payables over there at your company? Yeah, that's me. Okay, well, it's this clunky 30-second opener. Yeah.
Yep.
So
Pardot used to, like way back when I started, we used Pardot. Pardot would do some of that. By the way, I'm a fan of Pardot. I literally just bought. But it's interesting. So Salesforce obviously has everyone under the sun cookied. You go to one of their product pages, they instantly call you. I don't think it's that abnormal. What's getting abnormal is like you come to my site, you've never been to my site, I've never cookied you, anything like that. I can still tell who you are. But do you go in for a direct sales pitch? Do you call them? Do you email them first? Do you send a LinkedIn connection? Like, how would you build at a tactical level? And I know you're not doing this today, but as an expert, I figured I'd ask, what are the first steps that you would implement in that sequence?
So given that level of insight, knowing exactly who was on our website and what they were visiting, I think you could play the game and you could do the happy coincidence. But I think also in 2024 and beyond, I think most buyers are getting more sophisticated and understanding what's getting tracked. And so it's like, why play the game, right? Let's just be direct and say, hey, I've got software that tells me you're on our website. You didn't fill out a form for us to contact you, but I did see you were there. Want to see if there's anything I can help you with. And like, I don't know, I'd want to reword that to maybe a
Yeah.
little bit more sophisticated, but I think you can cut right to it. You know, why play the game?
So I find it interesting. One of our partners, and then also they're also an investor, is actually a recruiting company. A little different than a traditional agency. It's actually where I got started. But it's interesting because they'll pick up the phone and they will not shy away from it. They will say, hey, saw you were on the site. But it's almost like, hey, you spent 10 minutes on the site. Instead of doing a bunch of digging on us, why don't I just answer any questions that you have? And they have a good response. Now, they're targeting heads of talent acquisition, HR, et cetera. I'm targeting marketers and heads of sales. I think it depends on your persona. Marketers know that creepiness is out there. If they don't like data, they probably suck at marketing, in my opinion. Although, again, I'm biased. I think it's really going to depend on that persona. But I think people get too shy about, no, we use data. We're a data-driven company. We help you, in your case, with ARAP. We're very data-driven, and we prove it. We put our money where our mouth is by literally tracking everything that we can and reaching out to people that we genuinely think we can help.
That's much better put than my script. And
Well, in all fairness, my job.
but I think to your point, it's, you know, building out a series of plays. And so the way my science brain would look at it is, in what cases do you just go direct and say, hey, let's cut to the chase. You're on our website. What do you need help with? Or what can I help you with? And then there might be some that you do the happy coincidence with, or you mentioned your cybersecurity customer that maybe you want a 24-hour delay on that. So I think I would, if I was to build something like this out, I would want to build out a series of probably 2 or 3, maybe 4 plays on that.
Sure.
And then test the ones that work the best. But we still face that today with, even without that level. We get this all the time in sales development. How'd you get my phone number?
We're good at what we do.
We buy lists, right? And your name was on it. Like, can we move on, or do we need to dwell on how I got your phone? Like we're talking right now. So I think it's similar with, we have a debate. There's a debate right now around, I don't know the exact phrasing. I call it call masking, where you call in with a local phone number, right? Even though you're somewhere else, you're in Detroit, I'm in San Francisco, and you call me with a 415 area code, and you're going to trick me into going, oh, here's someone local. And then you go, actually, I'm in Detroit. And it's like, who cares? You know, like,
I ignore those more than I do anything else. So like it too, the area codes will come up as a random city. Although, yes, it's a shared area code.
right.
You know, my iPhone will tell me Hanover, Michigan. I literally got one today that was from Hanover, Michigan. Hanover's in the middle of nowhere.
Exactly.
It's farmland. Like I can't
Yeah.
even tell you on the map exactly where it is, and I'm sure it's within an hour of me. But I know that it's a sales call. It's not going to work. Now, if you're in New York and I somehow get a 212 number, maybe that's a little different. But I think the BS meter is too high right now to pull that off.
Yeah. And that's kind of I guess that's kind of where my point lies, is that 5-6 years ago, that probably worked. Right. But I have a 925 area code. I live in the East Bay, in the Bay Area, and I get calls from my hometown, and I go, there's no businesses in the city that I live in. There's not, this is residential.
Yep.
So when I see that number, unless you're one of my relatives, I would already have you saved in my phone.
Right.
So when I see 925 anything, my brain goes, is this my doctor? Is this my dentist or a family member? I have all of those numbers locked into my phone. So no. And then you just don't answer because you know what's going on.
Absolutely. And then I don't even listen to voicemails. I don't think many people do anymore. I'll look at the transcript real quick that iPhone gives me and then delete it. Diverting a little bit, you guys use 6 cents. A lot of companies use 6 cents. A lot of companies aspire to use 6 cents, but can't afford 100, 150 gram, whatever it costs. How has that changed your outbound strategy. And let me preface that by saying, yes, they identify accounts. We covered that. Yes, they have intent data. Maybe it's different for you, but I have found intent data not to be super reliable only because it's a lagging indicator. So
Right.
if you're dealing with a 12-month sales cycle, maybe even 6 months, sure, they may be in the buying process. It might still make sense. But for anything under a 6-month sales cycle, and feel free to disagree, by the time intent filters actually pick that company up, they've already bought a vendor, or they're in the middle of implementing, or they're in the last rounds, whatever. How has it been useful to you guys, if at all?
So for us, I think it's more about account distribution. And what I mean by that is we want our outbound SDRs working the right accounts. And the right accounts could be because there's ICP data that supports that this looks like a customer, or intent data that says this could be a customer. So we want our outbound SDRs targeting and going after the right accounts. And so using 6sense for, we've got three different layers of ICP here. We have our inner core. That's kind of our sweet spot. And then our outer core is like the stuff just beyond that. And then everything else we call the universe. And so for the universe accounts, and we've got hundreds of thousands of these in our database, we're not going to outbound to them because they're considered universe, but some of them have some intent and could have a higher closing rate. So what we'll do is we'll use that 6sense intent score to say, you know what, if they score, let's just say 70 and above, let's flip that account and put that into an outbound SDR's name to go after. Now, to your point, is it too late at that point? Now that intent score is already that high, and that's where you can get, when you look at the micro and the macro of this. Maybe we miss it out this time, but we'll get them next year. We've added that account now to the outbound SDR's name to say this is a viable potential buyer. So that's how we use it, and try to build out, because we want the outbound team to have. We don't want them to only work 200 accounts. Right. We want them to have a couple thousand accounts in their name. They'll focus on 200 to 300 at any given time, but those other 1,700 in their name, those are possible that could become opportunities. So it's a tool to help with that.
Sure, it makes perfect sense. And then I'm happy you guys are a Salesforce proponent, correct?
Oh yeah, all that.
I go off on CRM selection. I'm very, what's the right word? Not just picky, but I'm a little stuck up about CRMs. I can tolerate HubSpot now. I used to call it CrudSpot, but I think if you're doing ABM outreach in particular, nothing beats Salesforce. HubSpot is better for high volume, maybe a little bit lower ACV type deals, in my opinion. So just throw my 2 cents in.
I'll take your word for it. I've been on Salesforce I haven't worked with any other CRM other than Salesforce, and the old, when I worked at a couple different Series A startups, spreadsheets was what we had, right? And but every other organization I've been with has been Salesforce. So I was a couple of years late on switching to Lightning. I was still clinging on to Salesforce Classic for a couple of years, but now I'm all about Lightning, and big fan.
I gotcha. Well, man, I really appreciate you taking the time. I think this is super insightful, very tactical, and that's what we like. Any last thoughts that you want to add?
I think just if you're in sales development, never stop learning. You can't stop evolving. I think this profession, this environment is evolving. I don't want to put a date range, but every 6 to 12 months, you and I could meet again in a year from now, Stephen, and I could have completely different opinions. And I think that's the key to staying successful in sales development, is to constantly stay current, be really in tune with the tools out there and how to equip your team, and don't rely on what worked 5 years ago still going to work today.
No, it makes perfect sense, man. Again, Jesse, thank you so much.
Likewise. Thank you, Steve. Thanks for having me on.